Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make cream of celery soup from scratch. Now, this isn't that condensed version that's in casseroles and crock pot recipes and all that, but we're going to make a soup that's ready to eat for lunch or dinner or whenever you want to have it. So it's a simple recipe. There's like 6 ingredients or something. It takes about 20 minutes to cook. So let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to start with a stick of butter. And this is unsalted. If you use salted, you want to make sure you're watching your sodium on everything else. So we're going to take the butter and put it in my pot. And I'm going to turn that over medium high. So we want to melt that butter. And while that starts melting, since it's a full stick, we're going to start on our vegetable. So let's start with the onion. This is 1 onion. Probably a medium-sized one. So we just want to cut that into chunks. And guys, we're going to puree this soup after, so you just want them small enough to cook. This is a sweet onion, but you could certainly use yellow if you wanted. That's usually what I have in the house. I'm going to push that to the side just till the butter melts, and then we'll drop it in there. The next thing is we're going to take an entire head of celery, and you just want to make sure the ends look good. If they don't, trim them off a little bit. I've also got a little bit of celery that is getting beyond its prime. It actually was getting wilty, so I cut the bottom off, put in some water, and that firmed it back up. So I'm going to cut this up as well. Pull off a couple things. It's soft again. It's a good way to use up celery if you have a head of it in the house and don't use it very fast. And when we cut up the celery, we're going to cut it leaves and all. So if the leaves are still green, cut them up with it, because we want all that flavor, and we're going to blend it. Our butter's looking good, so let's move this stuff over. Now for the entire head, and all I do is, that's going to be wiped off a little bit. So you want to clean it if you need to, so let's take a check. Yeah, we'll take a look when it gets lower. I just start at the top, guys, and just chop it. Don't worry about if it's messy or not. You don't want them too big because you want to give them time to cook. Move it over and make some more room. I should have got a bigger cutting board. All right, let's finish cutting this up. And then when you get to the end, you just get rid of that piece. Throw it all in the pot. Next, we're going to take 1 potato. This is a Yukon Gold. A lot of times I use russet. You want a medium to large potato, so if this one's a little bigger, I'm going to use this today, but if you have a smaller one, that's fine. The biggest thing it's going to do is change the consistency a little bit. It might not be quite as creamy because of the potato being smaller, but you're still going to have great taste and texture. So don't worry about an exact size, kind of like the you have a smaller head of celery, that's fine, just use it. This is a good recipe to not have to do a whole lot of measuring. One thing that melting our butter and adding it as we go, everything as we go, is that it'll start cooking and softening. Because we want to make sure this cooks up in about 20 minutes. And just give this a quick chop. You want it about the same size as the celery and the onion, that way there it cooks up at the same time. Okay, got our potato in there. So we do want to add a little bit of salt and pepper. We can always add more later, so don't over salt it. So there's some pepper. There's some salt, we'll check it later for more. Now, the herb that we're going to use in this is dill. So I've got some dried here, but I also have some fresh in the freezer that I'm going to use today. If you're using dried, you want about a teaspoon or so. You want to add it now, that'll let it rehydrate and cook into the soup. If you're using fresh, like I'm going to do, add it to the end, either before or after you puree the soup. It's fresh, so it doesn't really need to cook long. It'll still add all that flavor, but we don't want to cook everything out of it. So I'm going to add the fresh at the end. It's in the freezer. I'll tell you what I did with that to keep it in the freezer when we get there. Now we just need to add some liquid. So I've got 1 quart of, this is low sodium chicken broth, but use whatever you have. If you have bouillon, use that. You just want 4 cups. Make sure it's gluten free if you've got packaged stuff or the bouillon stuff. We want to add that to here. We want to bump this up to high, because we want to bring it to a boil. So let's give it a stir. Now that everything's in here, we want to bring it up to a boil. I've got it set over high heat. Once we come up to a boil, reduce it down to about medium-low or so. You want it to simmer, and you want to put a lid on it. So put the lid on it, set your timer for about 20 minutes, and then we'll finish up this soup. Okay guys, so it's been just over 20 minutes, and my veg is where I want it. So if you check it in 20 minutes and the celery is still a little crisp, or the potatoes aren't quite cooked, leave it on there for another 5 minutes until it's done where you like it. So this is what we have. As you can see, it's cooked down a little bit from earlier. Everything's soft and it's quite a bit of food in there. So I want to add some dill. This is dill that I froze. And what I did is when I bought the dill at the store, I used the recipe, whatever I needed, and then picked off the leaves, put them on a sheet pan, froze them, and then put them in a Ziploc bag. I just want to add a couple tablespoons. I'm not going to chop it up because it's going to get blended. Once it's blended, we'll check it for salt and pepper and add more if we need to. And then I'm going to use my immersion blender for this. I use this about once a month, twice a month sometimes. So for about $30, I think it's a good investment for me. If you don't have an immersion blender, by all means, use your regular blender. Just do it in batches so it doesn't splatter everywhere. And we want to put this in and blend it until it's smooth. Our soup has been blended up, and for not having any cream in it, it's already pretty creamy because of that potato in there. So with the potato and the vegetables, if you don't want any cream in this point, don't add any. What I like to do is add a little bit of half and half. You could use heavy cream if you want, but I'm gonna use half and half. So this is all to taste. So I'm gonna add anywhere from 3/4 of a cup to a cup of half and half. Give it a mix. And it's gonna lighten up that soup a little bit in color. And give it an even creamier texture. I think I'm good with that. And then give it a taste. You could definitely use a little bit more salt and pepper. We'll add a little bit more. Give it another stir. Let's bowl up a little bit and give it a try. So we seasoned it up a little bit more after we cooked it, but I think it's good enough in there now. So the texture is really smooth. That starch in the potato really helped smooth everything out and make it creamy to begin with. And then we added that half and half to give it a little more richness. You can taste the celery, of course, because we used a whole head of it. There's some onion in the background. I use chicken broth. You could certainly use vegetable broth if you wanted to. You could swap out the butter for something that's non-dairy or that's vegan if you wanted to do that. This is a really basic soup, so it's not, a bunch of different ingredients, but I really find it satisfying. I think it's got a clean taste to it because of the celery. It's healthy. I mean, there's a stick of butter in it, let's be honest, but we also have vegetables in it, and there's not a whole lot of calories other than the butter and the half and half. So you're not getting a whole lot of calories in a cup of soup or a bowl of soup. If you want to garnish it a little bit, put a little bit more dill on the top, or you could save those celery leaves and dress it with that. Guys, I hope you give this recipe a try. If you do, leave me a comment below. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.